And I'm Doug Moody. I will be your facilitator today. So for the agenda for today, first we have Bernice, who's going to provide an update of the overall VTA BSV Phase 2 project. Then after Bernice, we have Ann Calnan with VTA, who's going to highlight, has a project highlight for you about how the project's excavated material will be beneficially reused. Then Erica is going to share an update about VTA's Downtown Customer Service Center. And after Erica, we have Clarence Ng here to give you an update regarding the Business Resource Program. And then following Clarence, Erica will be back again to share with you some information about the project's early construction activities. Then at the end, we'll have space for the CWG member report outs. And a reminder that the report out portion of the meeting is your opportunity to share with the group how you've been sharing information about the project with your communities and what you've heard from them. So we can be aware of the issues that are out there and jointly address them and deliver the project in partnership. And then at the end of the meeting, we'll conclude with some info about the next round of CWGs in September. I'm going to admit some more folks from the waiting room, let them get connected. Justin and Diego, welcome. Just doing some rough introductions, early introductions, went through the agenda. And then the next slide, please, Joanne. So before we get into the meat of the meeting, as I believe many of you already know, Carlos Diaz, a beloved community member and leader, recently passed. In memory of and to celebrate Carlos, I'm going to ask this group to participate in a moment of silence. During that moment, I encourage you to think about Carlos and his life here with us. After the moment of silence, I'll open up the floor for folks to share what they want to share with this group about Carlos. And with that, let us have a moment of silence to honor and reflect upon Carlos. Okay, and I would like to open the floor. Thank you for taking that moment with us. I would like to open the floor for people to share reflections that they have about Carlos. I will start. I didn't know him that well, but he was a great energy in these meetings. He was always such a warm, welcoming figure when we were opening up, leading chats with the group, and always just so pleasant in the way he shared and represented his community. So I just feel for all those that were closer to Carlos than I was, and acknowledging the loss that many people are likely experiencing from him no longer being with us anymore. And if other folks would like to share, please, you can put up your hand and I can call on you, or feel welcome to just chime in. David.
Yeah, Carlos was a great guy and a great advocate for all things East San Jose. His nickname was DJ Carlos because he had a 30 to 40-year-old business, Night Sounds, here, and he was a mentor to many DJs, countless, really, DJs here in Santa Clara Valley. He's a graduate of Bellarmine and Santa Clara University. He has 5 children. His wife, he leaves behind a wife and 5 children, the youngest of which is a junior at Cristo Rey, San Jose, right here next to the future BART station. And 2 other graduates from Cristo Rey, and then the other older kids went to Bellarmine and Notre Dame. But a memorial service will be forthcoming, held here at Five Wounds Church. I don't have the details on the timing. And yesterday he was, in his memory, the city council meeting was adjourned in his name, and his oldest child, it happens to be a daughter, Audrey, she gave a very touching remembrance of her father in the city council chambers before the afternoon meeting started. So they adjourn and then they go to closed session and then they come back. And anyway, yesterday was a very nice remembrance of Carlos at the city council meeting.
That's great. Thank you for sharing that, David. Does anyone else have anything about Carlos they'd like to share with this group? Okay. David nailed it. So we're gonna keep moving with the meeting. So here we go. Next slide, please. So before we get into the meat of the presentation, we'd like to do that thing we do. We ask CWG members to present, or the CWG members who are present, to introduce yourselves to the group just by stating your name and organization. And I'll go on down the list. And if I miss anyone, please say something. I'm known to do that. It's not on purpose. I don't see Bill. I don't see Chris. I don't see Connie. I don't see Danny. I do see David. David, do you want to say hi? Also the chair. I should have passed it to you first anyway. So that worked out today.
Yeah, David Vieira with Five Winds Portuguese National Church. And just a reminder, Terry Christensen left for England this week, and he won't return until September, I believe.
Great.
I'm attending. I'm covering for Terry right now. This is Imelda Rodriguez. I'm also with Communiversity, and I'm a resident of the Olinder neighborhood.
Imelda's well known and for years, and she was one of us who created the urban village plans here in the area, which are currently going through a redo as we speak.
Good, David. Yes.
Thank you, David. Welcome, Imelda. Don't see Dee or Elma or Ed, Helen. Justin, welcome, Justin. Justin, you want to say hi?
Hello, this is Justin. Hopefully, I'm from Radio SSJ, Eastside Bicycle Community. Thank you.
Great, thanks. Welcome, Justin. Marcos?
Hi everyone, this is Marcos Manriquez. I'm here representing Cristo Rey San Jose. As David said, it'll be right in front of the future BART station. So here representing our school. Great,
thank you for being here. Again, Marcos, I don't see Matt and I don't see Ricardo, and we have Imelda representing Communiversity. And then one more thing before I pass it over to Bernice for the phase 2 update. Next slide, please. Just some updates about some upcoming meetings where VTA's BART project will be highlighted. The San Jose City Council meeting on May 23rd. A couple of BART task forces, one for the accessibility, May 25th. The Bike Advisory Task Force for BART on June 5th. At Santa Clara City Council on June 6th. We'll also have the next 28th Street Little Portugal CWG meeting in September. And then at the VTA Board of Directors regularly in June, August, and September. And if there's other meetings we think folks should know about, Kristen will email those out to the group like she normally does. And then with that, over to Bernice to provide an update on the phase 2 project. Up to.
Okay. So to the right, we have our project alignment. I think you're all fairly familiar with that now, showing the 4 stations, our 6-mile project with the light blue being the section under the tunnel and the darker blue on either end being the above ground portion of the alignment. For a general project update, we have completed preliminary engineering of the systems, which are all the communications and such to make it an operating rail system, the yard and the stations. And we are doing what's called an interdisciplinary design review. And that's when all the different factions of the project take a look, and also where our partners such as BART look at these, and we ensure that it's meeting all the requirements. We presented at the MTC, our chief presented at the MTC Programming and Allocations Committee. That effort was to ensure MTC is the Metropolitan Transportation Commission. They are the regional kind of funder for projects. They get state funds and then they pass it on to the various agencies. So we are trying to be very visible amongst MTC and all of their commissioners so that we get our fair share of the pot. We still have, and you'll see on one of the future slides, some local regional funds that we're trying to ensure that we get. And we've been doing ongoing coordination with BART on the design development submittals. As I mentioned, they review. We are the owner, designer, funder, but BART will be the operator. So we work in close coordination with them. And then we are presenting this month and next to both the San Jose City Council and the Santa Clara City Councils for the Construction Transportation Management Plan, which you'll get some further details on that today. And we can go to the next slide. So a funding update. As you all may recall, earlier in the year, we transitioned from what was the expedited project delivery pilot program to the traditional New Starts program. It's the program that we got the federal funding and executed a grant for $900 million on the Berryessa project. Right now, we're looking at about a $4.6 billion ask. We entered that program in the first stage, which is called the project development stage. And next month, we're actually going to make our application to get into the next stage where we present our 30% design and we get into the engineering phase of the FTA Federal New Starts funding program. And then the final phase, which will be later in the year, towards the end of the year, early next year, we'll be making the application for our full funding grant agreement. And that is really the contractual agreement that states the amount and the time frame of the money we're going to get from the federal government. And this shows our funding plan with the 4.6 billion federal share, 375 million regional share, 375 yet to be determined, and a little over $1 billion from the state, and then just a little under 3 billion locally. And we can go to the next slide. Tunnel and track work update. As I think we've all shared earlier, we are delivering this tunnel and track work contract. It's the biggest of the 4 contracts through what's called Progressive Design Build Delivery. And what Progressive Design Build is, we bring the contractor on very early during conceptual design and work with them side by side through kind of an open book process to advance the design. One of their first orders of work was to do some innovations. Kiewit Shade Trailer, that is the joint venture that was awarded this contract. So it was awarded about a year ago, and they worked on those innovations. I think we have a slide in the future, but we had a smaller tunnel previously, and now we have a larger tunnel that fits those tracks side by side with the center platform, which also allowed for some future innovations and enhancements to passenger circulation. We're still doing negotiations as part of this process of this open book. We do negotiations, and it allows the owner to have a little more control over the cost. And that's what we're working on right now, is the updated cost and schedule. Next slide, please. These are the 4 contract packages I mentioned. The CP2 tunnel and track work contract is one of 4. While we went with a Progressive Design Build, we are now going to pursue the other contracts for more of a traditional design bid build. So we're going to advance the design more on the project owner side, VTA side, and then we'll put those contracts out for bid. And those 3 are the systems, as I mentioned. That's everything to make it an operational rail system, communications, electrical, all of that. And then there's the Newhall Yard and Santa Clara Station in a separate contract. And then the 3, we call them underground stations. That really reflects the below ground boarding, but they all have the above ground, what we call station head house, which is what we all would refer to as a station building. Next slide, please. So procurement look ahead, got a couple questions on this, and I'll just kind of clarify. We are looking to bring on a construction management consultant, and that will really be the consultant that oversees the management of the actual construction. They manage the contractors that are doing the construction and also do quite a bit of the QC quality assurance and such. We have all along, since the inception of this project, since 2016, basically, when we started going through the environmental process, brought on a program management consultant, and they really oversee the overall program, all of the aspects. Like, they have staff working to put together the materials for the federal funding. They've been working on the design. They work and direct our general engineering contractor that we also have on board. And then we have all of our construction procurements, the second phase for the CP2 contract. Right now we're in phase 1 with the design, but then we will actually be awarding them when the work starts of the tunnel boring. And then we have the other construction procurements for those 3 other contracts I talked about, which will occur between 2024 and 2025. This is our project look ahead. We're going out right now to 2028 with a 5-year look ahead. Right now, we're in the just about getting to that point. You see, we're between 2023 and 2024, where we will request to get into the New Starts engineering phase. We start some of our early construction work right about the time that we get our full funding grant agreement mid-2024, and then we start our major construction right there in around the 2025 timeframe. We have been recognized by a very notable publication called Engineering News Record. It is a national engineering publication that lots of engineering firms and construction firms really follow to find out about projects, what's coming up in the world of transit infrastructure. We were recognized as the owner of the year, both for our BART Phase 2 extension project, as well as the 80 other capital projects that VTA is working on, most notably just a bit smaller than the mega project that BART is the extension for light rail to Eastridge. They're calling it the BART Connector Project. We last night went to, as I mentioned, the Metropolitan Transportation Commission's Owners Night, where we presented project information. And then on Thursday, tomorrow, we will be attending a carabiner event in downtown San Jose at just right off 2nd Street there. We'll have a table. I can't think of that little area, what it's called, right behind Western Dental Building.
Fountain Alley.
Fountain Alley, there it
you
is.
go, Erica. I was drawing a blank on it. I say that all the time, but yeah, we'll have a table. There'll be a lot of resources that'll be out there. Really, it's part of an overall effort to kind of start revitalizing downtown San Jose and bringing people out and letting them know all the services and businesses that are out there. We have been still in close coordination with Google Downtown West. Some of you may have read, they have not broke ground yet. There has been some slight delays, but they have been assuring us that they are committed to San Jose for the long term. You may have read this quote in the paper. It was in the Mercury News. So we're closely coordinating with them on our efforts at the Diridon station. Next slide, please. I think that's it before I bring Ann in, and I guess I'm happy to answer any questions if you have them.
Yep. So if there's questions or comments for Bernice, please raise your hand or drop something in the chat. And if there's not, we'll jump on over to Ann.
Great, thanks, Doug. Hi, everybody. My name is Ann Calnan, VTA's Environmental Programs Manager. My part of the presentation gives an overview of a project called the Beneficial Reuse of BART Silicon Valley Phase 2 Tunnel Excavated Material at the former salt production ponds, which is more easily referred to as the Beneficial Reuse Project. Next slide, please. So I'm sure you're all familiar, but this map shows the location of the former salt production ponds in the South Bay. So when construction of the BART tunnel begins, the Beneficial Reuse Project involves transporting that tunnel material to the South Bay for the sole purpose of raising the bottom elevation of select and deeply subsided salt ponds. By placing the material within these ponds, we will be accelerating the timeline for tidal marsh development. So currently, the salt ponds rely on natural processes such as tidal action to bring in the sediment to raise the pond bottoms to what's called marsh plain elevation, and this could take decades. Our project speeds this process up in order to achieve the benefit of habitat restoration on a much quicker time scale. So there are several key benefits to reusing the tunnel material in this manner. The benefit of raising the pond bottoms to ultimately enable habitat restoration will help address sea level rise. If the ponds were to rely only on natural processes and given sea level rise, the buildup of the pond bottoms and ultimate habitat development would take even longer. The project also addresses greenhouse gas emissions, as disposing the excavated material in landfills in the South Bay and beyond requires truck hauls of much longer distances. And to explain this a bit more, the EAIR in the environmental document in 2018 just called out disposing the material in landfills. There's quite a bit of material. It cannot just go to local landfills. It has to go to landfills that are farther away. So the salt pond option for disposing this material is much closer. Relatively, the South Bay, they're close to the West Tunnel portal where all this excavation material will originate. It's about 7 or 8 miles away. Speeding up, next Plus, speeding up the timeline for tidal marsh restoration will ultimately create habitat for threatened and endangered species. The excavated material will also cover existing mercury contamination in some of these ponds as a result of historical mining operations. Restoration of the salt pond also addresses flood risks. And lastly, the reuse project avoids wasting all this excavated material that otherwise would go to the landfills. Next slide, please. So what I'm showing you here on the left is the cover of the BART Silicon Valley Sustainability Master Plan. And on the left are 5 broad categories for what's called the Envision Sustainability Rating System. So in July 2021, we finalized the Sustainability Master Plan. And in this plan, it's noted that VTA is pursuing an Envision Platinum certification, which is the top certification from an organization called the Institute for Sustainable Infrastructure. Reuse of the tunnel excavated material at the salt ponds earns us considerable points in the Envision framework in order to meet that platinum goal. Most notably, the points are gained for this aspect of the project in the natural world category and climate and risk category. Reusing the material at the salt ponds is the most sustainable option compared to other disposal options, because there have been other options suggested, but this is without a doubt the most sustainable. Next slide, please. So the salt pond project, this idea of taking the material to the salt ponds is it's not new because we've been exploring it for a while, but it became real after we met with a regulatory group called the Bay Restoration Regulatory Integration Team. Those are high-level regulators, and we just met them in January this year. Following that meeting, they placed this project on their priority list. As a priority project, we will work cooperatively with the regulators to expedite project permitting, which is a critical path for project success. Another update, the California Coastal Commission awarded us $1.5 million in grant funding towards the environmental clearance and permitting phase for the reuse project. And just a couple of days ago, I talked to the California Wildlife Conservation Board about a grant for the design phase, which primarily consists of the construction methodology, how you place the material into the ponds, as well as work related to addressing the Water Quality Control Board's what's called a Quality Assurance Project Plan, or QAP, to make sure that all the material that enters into the bay, that's placed into the bay, is quote unquote clean. No contaminants that would harm aquatic systems in the bay. Finally, we are embarking, and this includes this tonight, on a robust community engagement process to get the word out about this project and to get feedback as well. Last slide, I do want to highlight that this is a highly collaborative project with all the regulators, state and federal. There are partners, as is the Coastal Conservancy and Valley Water. Valley Water owns one of the ponds. The partnership to date has been very productive, and we're looking forward to continued engagement with these partners, as well as other interested stakeholders and the public. And with that, I'm happy to answer any questions.
If you have a question for Ann, please put your hand up or drop it in the chat. And not seeing anything in the chat or hands going up. Thank you very much,
Great.
Ann.
Thank you.
Moving on to Erica with an update on the VTA Customer Service Center.
Great, thank you. So just wanted to give everyone an update here on the status. VTA examined and looked at numerous available spaces in the downtown San Jose area near the county's busiest bus transit corridor and downtown transit mall to identify a new space for the downtown customer service center. After being made aware that the space at 2 North Market Street was actively seeking a new tenant and could successfully accommodate our functional requirements for its customer service center, VTA signed a long-term lease with the landlord, and the customer service center will be relocating and opening there early summer this year. A little bit more about what happens in the space in the customer service center. It serves the surrounding community and assists transit users with general inquiries and other requests related to maps, scheduling, purchasing Clipper cards, applying for regional transit connection discount cards, etc. In addition to relocating the customer service center, we will also be opening a phase 2 project public information office at the same location before construction begins in the area. At this office, members of our project outreach team will help educate and provide updates to the local community about the progress of the project. As for the 28th Street station area, we are still actively looking for space for our public information office in that area, and we're open to suggestions if you have any. And that's the update on the customer service center and public information offices.
Thank you, Erica. David's hand came up early into your section, and Anne, the question is for you. It's also in the chat. So Anne, if you could jump back on. And David's question is, will muck come out of the east portal or the Little Portugal station area?
No,
I'm pretty sure the answer is that no, but yeah.
yeah, no, the actual tunnel material will only come out of the west tunnel portal.
So it's going to go miles back through the tunnel to come out the west end?
Yeah, as the tunnel boring machine advances, you know, it starts at the west tunnel portal, and as it advances into the earth, a conveyor belt system is behind it, and the muck material comes out of that conveyor belt back out to the west tunnel portal.
Also, what about the station, the box cut, station box cut?
Yeah, so that's great material, just as long as it's not contaminated material, because remember that whole quality assurance thing. That could potentially be used, but the thing with the salt pond project is it has to be environmentally cleared as a separate project. And we have it timed, the environmental clearance, in order to kind of match when the tunnel material is going to start coming out. If we can get the environmental process and the permitting process done sooner than that, then we can take that material over to the salt ponds as well if it's clean. I'm not 100% sure right at the moment if the schedule will allow for that.
And this is for Erica. Is our local office, field office, anywhere near resolution?
Yeah, no, we're still looking for a space in the 28th Street Little Portugal station area.
Yeah, I'm disappointed that the one you had on the hook, property owner,
As were we, yes.
yeah, problematic to say the least.
So if you have any other suggestions,
I wish I did. The good thing is all the units around here are full except for the empty former 7-Eleven at 26th and Santa Clara. So yeah, units, that's a good thing. But
yes, it is.
the neighborhood,
a good challenge.
not for VTA, but good for the neighborhood.
Yes.
If something comes up, I will let you know, as I did for what was on the hook.
Great, thank you, appreciate it.
And then there's another question in the chat on your topic, Erica, from Marcos. Can VTA tokens be purchased at the new customer service center?
I don't know that off the top of my head. Bernice, do you know the answer to that question? If not, we can follow up and report back.
Yeah, as long as we're still using tokens, I'm not sure how much longer we're going to be continue using them, but we sell all the fares at the VTA customer service center. Yeah, so.
And I believe it's fair to say that the functionality of the existing customer service center is just moving into a new
Yes,
space.
absolutely.
Great. Any other questions for Erica on the customer service center? And if not, we'll go on to if there are, please put up a hand or something in the chat. And in absence of me seeing that, I'm going to move on to starting the next section for the business resource program update, which Clarence is presenting.
Great, thanks, Doug.
Yep.
So I just wanted to bring an update on the business resource program. I'm going to go to the next slide. While we know that the result of the construction will be a great benefit to the community, that there will be disruptions during the construction phase. So we've, as part of the business resource program, have really identified some significant goals. One is to really proactively prepare and help, the smaller businesses in particular, minimize sort of those disturbances during construction. You'll hear a little bit more about that later on. Additionally, during the construction phase, some of the operations may be impacted for some of the businesses. So we want to make sure that they're visible, that we maintain that access. And all this really helps support meeting the overall commitment for environmental issues with VTA for the project. So I'll go through some of those elements next slide. So the focus of the business resource program is on small businesses, those businesses who often maybe lack some of the resources as larger businesses and may be more acute in terms of their ability to withstand some disruptions. For the benefit of the program, we've identified or defined a small business as those who are for-profit with up to 35 employees. They must hold active business license, whether in the city of San Jose or Santa Clara, and also for the in terms of some of the benefits, not be deemed inappropriate, such as liquor stores, ammunition, adult stores, and the like. Next slide, please. In developing the business resource program, we've interacted and discussed with the VTA Small Business Task Force, including a presentation earlier this week where we presented this information in these slides. We've evaluated some other case studies in terms of business assistance around the country, different lessons learned. We've conducted interviews with business resource providers to better understand what resources they can provide to smaller businesses and what they may also have suggestions in terms of the program. As part of the CTMP, as well as the business resource program development, we've actually surveyed small businesses to get a better understanding of what their needs are. So really trying to develop the plan with as much information as possible. And then lastly, we've also consulted other transit agencies who have delivered similar business resource programs and identified, what worked, what didn't work, lessons learned of navigating through the process. And you'll see some of the results. A foreshadow is really just trying to help those smaller businesses, as quickly as possible. And so VTA has really tried to be nimble through this process. Next slide. So as part of the plan development, we've identified with the help of JC Lacey, 4 program elements: shop local marketing, signage and wayfinding, small business resource connections and support, as well as direct financial assistance. I'll walk through the next series of slides and you'll see how we've actually refined that and really sort of taking a closer look at how that may apply in this area. Next slide. So the first element is shop local marketing. What that is it's a branded marketing campaign. While there is construction disruption, really trying to have this overall marketing campaign that will continue to drive foot traffic to local businesses. How will we do that? A series of initiatives, having a social media campaign, a website, and there's examples where we can highlight and spotlight some of those smaller businesses. I forgot to mention, all these are really sort of opt-in programs. So again, for those businesses who are really interested, they are encouraged and will be working to get the information out until they can opt in. So the shop local marketing will include signage. You'll see some more information on the next slides on providing posters, banners, more visibility in terms of that the businesses are open, and really trying to integrate that as part of the overall campaign. And what that does is really tries to create a more of a sense of place, a consistent look and feel, having ads and vibrancy, in this overall area. Marketing assistance, and that may be providing some imagery, stock information to help some of these smaller businesses who may not have the resources or the support currently to do so. Preferred vendor lists will identify, again, opt-in, where it might be food and beverage for events where businesses can take advantage of their services, and really encourage a sense of if you wish, community rallying around these smaller businesses. We'll have pop-up events that will be programmed throughout the corridor, and promotional elements such as you see on the left-hand side, 2 things. One is a branded logo, but also the Lotteria, which is a card that maybe a patron or a visitor or resident may use it to go around the different businesses who opt in and get a stamp, and that may be redeemed for such as a gifts or prizes such as a transit pass. Next slide. The second element is signage and wayfinding. As I described earlier, really wanted to create more of that visibility amidst all the construction, which will be focused in certain areas in the station areas, as well as west and east portals. What that does is that it increases the overall visibility and awareness that businesses are open. It'll help encourage, again, foot traffic, direct patrons, whether it be by foot, bicycle, or vehicle, and that they know that this area is still active and these businesses are there and open. These signs will be coordinated with the construction signs, obviously making sure that they're visible, make sure that it's not cluttered, and that they'll be installed by both the contractor and VTA. And some of the photos you see on the right-hand side include banners on street poles, window clings, and other sort of business signage, again, promoting their presence. Next slide. Here's just an example of maybe some locations where they could be distributed along the corridor. This is not an exact location for all the signs, but it's illustrative of what we'll be doing in terms of the types of signs. We've curated the types of signs, and we'll have them throughout the entire station area. Whether it be on the lower left, on a bus shelter, on fencing, and again, as I showed earlier, on streetlights. Next slide. The third element is small business resource connections and support. And what that is that trying to rally around and create the sense of support for these smaller businesses, having a referral list of small business organizations that provide existing services so that they can, again, be able to, whether it be anything from accounting to web support and things like that. VTA will sponsor open houses where that will enable businesses to business owners meet up with these business resource providers, and again, help maybe provide some additional support for their business. Additionally, web-based training events, again, there are a lot of different resources that we've identified and that we'll be bringing to the community and the businesses through this initiative. These first three are really intended to be implemented prior to the start of construction. So really helping the businesses, if you shore up and be more resilient through the construction phase. Next slide. The fourth element is small business direct financial assistance. And what that is that there will be funds available to support small businesses through grants. And what that means is that, again, meeting the definition of a eligible small business, as I described earlier, be located adjacent to the above ground construction and staging areas. Again, a lot of the construction is going to happen on the ground with tunneling, but these are areas where we may experience different disruptions, whether it be a sidewalk closure, some obstruction of their signage, parking removal, and lane closures are some of those potential disturbances. And as part of this overall program, if they experience at least a minimum of 1 month continuous disruption to that access, they would be eligible to apply for some specific funding. And 1 month may seem like a long time, but when we talk about these construction projects and the duration, obviously through multi-month, multi-year. So we're just trying to provide a little bit additional support for these businesses through these more difficult times. Next slide. So what does that mean? We've identified, and some of the details are still being worked through with VTA, but looking at a tiered assistance where after an initial 1 month of continuous disruption, have access a lower amount that can be awarded, granted to the business with very minimal requirements. So really having a low bar, enabling these businesses to have access to these funds. And obviously with additional disruptions, a greater amount, as well as a little bit more, if you wish, documentation of those disturbances and those impacts. Those applications will be reviewed by VTA program manager, and that may be a third party if there's some technical financial elements that need to be verified. But really being able to, the key is really try to get these resources to the community and these businesses as quickly as possible. Next slide. This program of the business resource program will be administered and leveraging a business liaison team. What that does is that it's important to have folks on the ground being a conduit between VTA and the business owners. At the start, before the construction begins, we'll be regularly visiting businesses, creating those relationships that can be leveraged throughout the construction period. So there's a person that they've met, they know, they have their contact information, they can contact, and really be a resource to address issues that may be related to construction, or just again a conduit for information. This business liaison team will be multilingual, be able to communicate both project information and any concerns that the businesses have back to VTA and the project construction team. I think that may be my last slide. Oh, one more. So the last slide is really giving you a sense of the timeline of this program. Construction, as you'll hear later, is probably going to start further on in 2024. So really, we are in the early stages, and so we are developing this business resource program in advance to really help again provide those that additional support to businesses, in advance in preparation for the construction. I think that is my last slide, and if there are any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Thanks, Clarence. There's some questions in the chat for you.
Oh.
I can just read through. The first one is from Gabriel. Will businesses along the Alum Rock corridor east of King Road be able to opt into the marketing program?
Yeah, so the overall business research program has other than the direct financial assistance, has a broader access and a broader appeal in terms of being able to access those services. We are obviously putting it out to the community and helping community groups and members be able to access those services. Like, so for instance, the business resource support, we were looking at having a drop-in center, or using a local location to conduct some of that training and have that interaction. So yes, that is part of that will be available.
And there's a buffer, right? There's a certain distance within you're eligible for marketing services, right, Clarence?
Yeah, so we're working through those details, but generally, again, more specifically on the direct financial assistance, we're looking at about 500 feet from the actual construction areas who are going to be directly impacted. In terms of the rest of those resources, again, I don't think we're going to be turning folks away just because they are slightly beyond the corridor, but obviously just trying to provide those additional resources and services to the community. Another question is, what percentage of the businesses that would be affected qualify as small business? We are actually in the process of trying to do a first look at that. Generally, I think as we have identified, there's probably somewhere in 300 to 500 businesses within, let's say, 500 feet of the above ground construction areas. We're estimating right now maybe about 100, 120 could be qualified as small businesses. But again, there's criteria that we just need to sort through, and we have not again gone through that level of evaluation as of yet. Additional questions?
There's
Will there
one
be a
more in the
clause
chat.
What's that?
I was saying there's one more in the chat. There's one in the Q&A.
So will there be a clause to prohibit recipients from suing VTA for losses over those which they'll be compensated, and if compensated, if compensated, an acceptable word to the attorney to this time around. I'm not an attorney, but I will. I think that is part of the evaluation, in that the grant funding is, again, really trying to help provide some additional assistance during this disruptions. I don't think that there is anything that necessarily precludes.
I think,
Go ahead,
Clarence, the
Bernice.
reason that question's being asked is because I believe when we had the BRT, if you accepted the business interruption fund, you signed a legal
waiver.
document saying that that you would not sue VTA. We haven't talked about that, but I imagine when we meet with VTA legal that we'll get some direction
Right.
to something
Correct.
similar.
Thank you.
And there is also a question in the chat. I don't think that's a business resource program question. The question is, how is VTA helping businesses in downtown who are being asked to move out? In what ways are they being helped financially and to find a new place to locate? And VTA Real Estate is the department in charge of that work related to property acquisitions for the project itself. We've shared some high-level information about that, as in, I believe the last round of CWGs is in the slide. And we can talk with VTA Real Estate about getting a fuller answer back to this group. And that is it for the business resource program, unless there's other questions or comments. And if there aren't, we're going to switch over to Erica to give a overview of early construction activities. And let me confirm. Nope, there's the one question that we just answered live. So Erica, over to you.
Great, thank you. So been to talk to you all about the construction transportation management plans multiple times before. If we can go to the next slide. A reminder that the purpose of the construction transportation management plan, or CTMP, is to minimize and reduce to the extent possible construction related transportation impacts to all modes during construction. None of you seen this graphic here on the screen before, so quickly just want to remind you of the development process for our contracts package specific CTMPs. So I'm going to walk through some details of the first one on the coming slides. So during the development, as Bernice mentioned earlier, QHA Trailer is on board, the contractor for the tunnel and track work contract, which is contract package 2 or CP2. So during the development of the CP2 specific CTMPs, there's regular coordination between the contractor, VTA, and the cities. In addition, there's stakeholder engagement regularly with adjacent businesses and institutions throughout the development of the CTMP, and the community was also engaged to provide input and consideration at a community meeting. In the next slide, we'll show you some pictures there. We had our early construction activities public meetings in March that we talked to you all about in February at the February CWG. So we had an in-person meeting as well as an online meeting, and the materials are now posted online there at the link. If you didn't get a chance to participate or listen already, you can check it out there. So we connected with the general public and shared information about the early construction activities that will be happening at the West Portal site over the next couple of years. We had over 50 folks attend the public meetings and were able to answer questions from project staff as well as a panel of the KST folks as well. We had a positive outcome at and generally positive feedback that we received at the meeting. And now I'm going to walk through some of those details at high level with you here. Next slide. So the goal of this early construction timeframe, which this first CTMP that KST has developed, is for the next couple of years at the west portal only, which I'll show you on a graphic, kind of where that area is within VTA's Newhall Yard property. So the goal of this early construction activities is to prepare the site for the tunneling operation. So when the tunnel boring machine will operate and to build the tunnel. So the West Tunnel Portal is the beginning of the 5-mile long tunnel. And so some of the activities that will happen during this 2-year preparation include what you see here, constructing the on-site access points, the parking, constructing and operating a tunnel lining factory where the segments will be built, assembling the tunnel boring machine, and excavating and preparing for the tunnel boring machine. We'll go into detail on the coming slides more on what that is. Next slide. So this is a map here of VTA's Newhall Yard property, which is outlined in red. So to orient you all, north is to the right. The 880 freeway is on the left side of the screen. Brokaw Road is on the right of the screen. Coleman Avenue is at the bottom. And the active rail corridor runs through the middle of the screen. So I'm going to walk through the features of what will be occurring on this site during this early construction phase. So as I mentioned, all the activity will happen in the area within red, which is VTA's property there. As you can see, the site's directly west of the active rail, not west, to the east of the active rail corridor where Union Pacific operates, as well as Caltrain and other trains, which operate in the area currently from 4:30 a.m. to 1:30 a.m. So there'll be 3 entrances into the site. The staff and craft personal vehicles will enter in the area in blue on Newhall Street. And the construction vehicles will have 2 entry points, one on Newhall Drive at the orange circle and one on Brokaw Road in the orange circle. There's the employee parking is shown in blue there on site, will be constructed near that entrance, and they'll have some offices there, which are shown in gray. Those will be constructed during this phase. The West Tunnel Portal and the tunnel boring machine shaft is shown in green. That will be constructed during this phase of work. I'll get into some of the more of those details in the coming slides. Oh, if you can go back, not quite done with this one yet. The tunnel lining factory, which is shown in navy blue there in the middle of the rectangle, that facility will be constructed during this phase, as well as will begin to operate to fabricate the tunnel lining segments. The tunnel lining storage area, which is the area shown in purple to the right of the facility, will also be prepared during this time. Is where the segments will be stored. So during this phase, the ground needs to be prepared to store the tunnel lining segments that weigh 40,000 pounds each. Next, we have the construction of the grout plant, which is the area in brown. And in addition, the excavated materials bin, that's approximately 2 acres.
I think Erica froze. Can folks hear me?
I think she's just having a stare out with us.
Shall we pause for a moment? Erica knows this stuff very well. Bernice, do you want to roll with it while we get Erica back?
I can cover the activities that are happening during the early. Oh, is she back? Did she go? Is she there? This is the site for the future yard, and these are the various activities that will occur during the early works, we're calling it, and most of the activity will be in support of enabling the construction and launch of the tunnel boring machine, and to create and fabricate the liners for that tunnel boring machine. So in the area in the dark turquoise, that is the launch site for the tunnel boring machine, and the light turquoise will be where the future noise curtain will be. The light pink area over on the upper right is where the excavated material bins, that will be where the materials come from when they do the trench to do the big launch site for the tunnel boring machine. That will go into that bin. The blue over on the left is where there's parking. We get lots of concerns about construction parking. So just wanted to demonstrate that we have construction parking for the craftspeople and the staff that will be working there. The purple in the center is where the tunnel liners will go. There will be a tunnel liner factory in the blue building, kind of mid-center left. That's where they will actually construct these big, huge, massive cement tunnel liners that the tunnel boring machine will place. They weigh 40,000 pounds each. It takes 9 of them to make a full circle. It's either 6 or 9, and then they can do 6 or 9 segments, total segments a day. So they will be manufacturing kind of a stockpile of them because they can't make them as fast as they'll have to place them. So we will, in the early stages, be building a supply of those tunnel liners. The other activities would be the haul routes that you see both on Brokaw Road and Newhall Drive. And the overall big red area is the entire area that we'll be working within. So all the activity will happen in the VTA owned land that we purchased in 2006. Is she still offline? Do I need to go to the next one? Does anybody?
She's back.
I'm back.
Yay.
Apologies. I got disconnected.
I tried to fill in the best I could, Erica. I walked
You did
through
a
all the
fabulous
different
job.
things that are happening here.
Great, thank you. So we go to the next slide. Want to talk about some of the steps we're taking to manage the noise and vibrations. We'll be continuously monitoring the noise and vibration measures as well as, levels, as well as using additional spot testing during specific activities that are anticipated to generate higher levels of noise and vibration. As I mentioned earlier, we're installing the noise curtain, and there's an example of it there on the bottom of the image there of what a noise curtain looks like. Additional mitigations related to construction equipment and operations that the contractor will be implementing include turning off idling equipment, lining truck beds with materials to reduce noise, covering hoppers, bins, chutes with sound deadening materials, installing low impact backup alarms for use during nighttime hours. So it sounds more like a swoosh than a beep. Those are some of the examples of things that are being done. If you go to the next slide. So we talked about where the access points are on the map on the bottom. There's a line shown in purple, and that's where the truck queuing areas will be, where the trucks will stage on site before heading out into the freeway. These areas are also, in that area is where the truck wash will happen. The photo on the right is an example of a truck that's going through and getting washed before it goes out onto the public roadways to limit the amount of dirt that's taken out into the public roadways. Next slide. So basically high level, as all these activities are happening within VTA's property, from a transportation perspective, likely what you'll see is increased truck traffic on the area, some construction signage, and behind the fencing screening, activities happening within the yard for extended hours, which I'm going to touch on more in the next slide here. So these activities will require extended work and haul hours that go beyond the standard work hours in the city of San Jose and Santa Clara. As work begins this summer, the initial activities will be a single shift only, meaning that work will start from 6 a.m. and end at 6 p.m., as well as some work on Saturdays. And this is the area or for the time frame shown in the light green on the timeline here. Beginning sometime late 2023, critical construction activities will ramp up as part of the supportive excavation and the construction of the deep slurry walls for the tunnel boring machine shaft. That will require 22-hour work days and 22-hour shifts of hauling for those critical concrete pours, as well as Saturday work. So that time period is shown in teal, which is about 15 months. Double shifts begin at 6 a.m. in the morning and last until 4 a.m. And the Saturday is 6 to 6. After a certain period of time, if you can go back, not quite done with this slide yet, it's expected that the double shifted hauling after that 15-month time period will no longer be needed, and that will just stick to the standard hours of 6 a.m. to 4 p.m. And the double shifted work on site will continue, and Saturday work will continue in the navy blue section. So this time period that we're talking about today is about 2 years. Now we can go to the next slide. So a critical component to preparing is the tunnel lining factory and storage area that Bernice mentioned. So the factory is the area in blue, which is where the concrete tunnel lining segments will be fabricated that will be installed as in the tunnel as the soil is removed. Before the launch of the tunnel boring machine, 360 segments need to be constructed or fabricated. As Bernice mentioned, there's 9 segments that create a ring, and the factory can fabricate 6 segments per day. So 360 need to be fabricated before the launch, which is only 13% total of what will be needed. So the construction of this facility is anticipated to take about 12 months. And there's an example of a similar type facility in the graphic there, where a lot of the operations and fabrication happens within a enclosed building. And then if you go to the next slide, this is inside the operation will happen. So there's a picture on the right shows some of the tunnel lining segments stacked up, and the picture on the left is a segment being fabricated inside. The fabrication within the building helps to reduce the production sound of it. And the factory must keep up longer hours to ensure the production of the segments keeps pace with the daily use of the tunnel boring machine. So the factory will operate from 6 a.m. to 11 p.m. from the fall of 24 through major construction. Next slide. So in the following slides, we're going to give some more details, and images were made associated with preparing for launching the tunnel boring machine, which will begin the preparing of the site in order to launch, which will begin in fall of 23 for about 14 months. Here on the screen, you can see on the left is a picture of a tunnel boring machine being assembled, and on the right is a picture of some of the equipment required for those deep slurry walls with some rebar cages there. If you go to the next slide. The supportive excavation, or SOE, is required as part of the preparation for the tunnel boring machine. SOE construction creates the concrete walls below the ground to aid the excavation and create space for the tunnel boring machine to be assembled. The supportive excavation construction of the TBM shaft and the portal, which is the area shown in green on the graphic at the bottom, requires using excavation equipment, trucks hauling concrete in and excavating material out of the site, and other heavy equipment to dig the slurry walls 160 feet deep and to accommodate the 80-foot excavation that the TBM will launch from. This will be double shifted work, the 22-hour-a-day work, and with the double shifted hauling to accommodate the critical concrete pours in the complex sequence of work required to build these shaft walls. And the image there on the right is that image of the sound curtain again. Next slide. The image here shows an example of an excavated materials bin, which is where the soils will be stored eventually during major construction. During this phase of work, requires excavating the existing soil in the area at the placement of the bin, followed by lining and installing retaining walls to further build out the bin. In order to begin digging, the TBM requires a launch structure to push off of, and this is where the TBM support structure comes into play. It helps to push the TBM forward until it's able to propel itself from the tunnel liners that have been installed. So the image on the right, you can see the launch structure there, support around the tunnel boring machine, and the image on the left is of the tunnel boring machine as it's starting to move. So the launch platform construction must be double shifted and completed before the tunnel boring machine arrives on site to be reassembled on that platform. So when the TBM arrives, work to assemble the TBM will be double shifted to ensure that the tunneling begins. And the work to prepare the support structures and assemble the tunnel boring machine is not anticipated to produce high levels of noise. Next, we want to just talk through mention some of the ways that we'll be reducing dust in the area. As we all know, construction creates dust in the air and such. The contractor will be covering or moistening trucks carrying loose materials. suspending dust intensive activities and high winds, removing the visible mud and dirt off the trucks and on the adjacent public roadways, as we showed in the pictures earlier. In addition, we'll be installing screening around the site. An example of what this potentially could look like is what you see here on the bottom that we're working through right now in advance of construction. Lighting is critical to safe construction operations when we're operating 22 hours a day. But in order to minimize the ambient light affecting the nearby residences and businesses, we'll be using lights that direct downwards towards work activities, similar to what you see here. And the number of lights will be minimized to the extent that construction safety allows. There's a site lighting plan in development to implement strategies described. So those are some of the details of what's happening in this first time period of 2 years for these early construction activities. So just for the CP2 contract alone, there are 4 CTMPs anticipated. So this, what we described today, the early construction activities at the West Portal. KST has already started to develop the next CTMP, which covers early and major construction at Dearden, Downtown, and 28th Street Little Portugal stations. And then they anticipate a CTMP to cover major construction at the West Portal once the total and boring machine launches, and then a 4th one for the East Portal. In addition, once the additional contractors come on board, there will be more CTMPs, and we will be coordinating with several of you in the very near future on some of the details that KST is developing related to major construction in the 28th Street Station area. I think I just have a couple last slides here to cover. Our project team will be performing construction related surveys and monitoring. We've talked about the historic building monitoring program here before throughout the project. The goal is to assess and develop a baseline of the current architectural and structural conditions, perform monitoring throughout construction, and conduct post-construction surveys. So this is something that we did some initial research before, but are starting to dive into deeper now that KST is on board. The next slide. Some of the activities for building monitoring that will be happening in the future include general assessments, surveys, pre-construction surveys, air, noise, and vibration monitoring, and property protection instrumentation and monitoring. So VTA is coordinating with specific property owners as needed to conduct these activities over the next couple of years, and we'll be in touch potentially as needed. But just wanted you to be aware that we're advancing this program and making sure that we're protecting properties as we advance and begin construction. And with that, I'm happy to answer any questions, and it looks like there's quite a few in the chat.
There's quite a few in the chat. I answered some of them, and I think I could probably tackle a little bit of it up front, and then Erica, over to you. So David, you mentioned about if we're working with the city for intersection redesign. I think you're referring to 28th and Julian. So the project does have some existing commitments, right, requirements that we intend to continue to meet. We're also partnering with the city through the 5 Winds Urban Village Plan process and update, right, in the DDF, the plan for the properties VTA owns that are construction staging area will eventually be redeveloped as part of that. And so as that process advances, we intend to take information coming out of that and consider what may be appropriate for the project to install in a way that fits with the requirements, and also works for the project as it's installed. And then you're also mentioning the development north of Julian going through entitlements. I know entitlements don't necessarily result in a project being constructed. Do you know that project is moving into construction?
No, in fact, I heard that the principal who's pushing for the entitlements doesn't build very often. So it may just be for sale. I just learned that a couple of days ago. It's one of the principals from the SEC indicted, not that she was part of that, but the SEC indicted Silicon Sage that was in the news. So from what I learned a couple of days ago down at City Hall, that company may not actually build it, just get the entitlements and sell them. But still, I mean, they could be sold and construction could occur concurrently with the BART construction. So it's something that needs to be certainly taken into consideration.
Yep, there's a lot of projects like that on the corridor. You know, when we review the plans when they come from the city, we make comments, you know, we ask for coordination as things advance, including coordination through construction. And then we are keeping our eyes out, ears out for when something actually does advance into construction, so we know about that and can appropriately coordinate. And if it happens concurrently with construction with our project, that folds into the construction transportation management plan work that Erica leads, that I think you might have some questions about as well. Yes, so I don't know if you have a question specifically on the construction transportation management plan, but that is the process. We are aware of it. We're trying to make sure we know if something actually advances to construction. And if people know about that, we'd love to know about that from you.
There is actually another one I forgot about just outside the village plan on Julian, actually east of 27th. I mean, it's right there, almost across from, well, it's right about 26 by the gas station across on the north side of Julian. That's another few hundred units. So we're actually talking 1,300 units being in the pipeline right now for that immediate, very small area.
Yep. So we'll continue to engage in the 5 Winds Urban Village plan, try to figure out what the right, work with the city to figure out what the right solution is for that intersection, to what extent it should be built out by BSV, or to what extent VTA should partner in that improvement.
Because they may be only looking at it from the perspective of the developments north of Julian and not the having a BART station there. You know what I mean?
Yep.
I mean, planners come and go so often at the city, not to mention DOT personnel. Stuff like that has not been unknown to happen.
Right. Well, fortunately, you have me, who used to be with the DOT, was now on the BART project and helping you bridge the gap. So
one of them,
sticking around. Imelda has a question directly related to the CTMP in the Q&A box, Erica. Will there be parking to accommodate the workers' automobiles?
Yes, parking for the construction workers' automobiles will be provided within the construction staging area and identified and monitored so that is the case. If for some reason the contractor is not able to provide sufficient space for their staff's parking on site, then they're required to designate a space somewhere else and provide a shuttle in. So there will not be any construction work or personal parking in neighborhoods and such, as we know that is a concern and something that we'll actively be monitoring.
Yep, and I think that covers the questions in the chat. I answered some of them live, and we're at time for this item. And if people want to revisit, up next, the CWG member report back, and you can ask questions about what Erica presented during that time. So if there's
just
still
real
questions.
Quick, I would just say, related to David, your question about no one approaching the church. So we did do the pre-construction survey, condition assessment survey at the church. And so as KST is developing, that there's still work going on in the background. So that's why we haven't reached back out to you with any additional information, as they're still developing the individual thresholds and what the production plan is and in planning everything. So you have not been forgotten, and we will continue to coordinate with you.
Yep, David, Marcos, you good?
I guess I'll probably learn about it as we go, but I'm just curious as to what would happen if, you know, these things that are being installed to monitor stuff, if it does detect like noise level or vibration, like what's the plan after that? Do they stop? Do they
Right,
already a workaround?
Right, so that's part of the noise and vibration control plan. So like, as I mentioned, you know, there'll be continuous monitoring and there's spot monitoring. So like, for example, this is an example of noise and vibration equipment, so that the contractor can then monitor the equipment to see what's happening, so then they can adjust accordingly based on what they're seeing in the monitoring there.
Okay, moving on to the CWG member report back. Next slide, please. As I mentioned, you know, this is your time, right? We want to hear from you about what you've been sharing with your community about the project and what you've been hearing from your community. It's also your time. Just ask questions that you may have, or, you know, make comments or anything like that. So if anyone, like any of the CWG members would like to use this time during a report back, please feel welcome to do so. And as normal, please raise your hand or drop something in the chat.
I can share a little bit. So I know, and Carlos was a big advocate of getting student voice involved too. So we are working with Site Lab right now to have them come on site and take over one of our AP classes that's done taking AP test and give a presentation to a few students, and then they'll meet with a couple of our leadership members to kind of also weigh in a little more on the urban village plan. And just
Great.
continually trying to send out communication to families and our staff members of the surveys that we get, all the other information as well.
Great, thank you, Marcos, and thank you for doing that. Thank you for playing your role as a leader of your community to keep your community informed. David.
Yeah, I'm getting more regular questions about, hey, is this thing going to happen? When is it going to start? When we're going to start seeing demolition? So I just tell them what I know, and they seem to be happy enough with that. It's kind of like you're kind of waiting for a hurricane, right? I never waited for a hurricane. I have waited for tornadoes before when I went on business trips in the Midwest, but it's kind of like waiting on a hurricane. You know it's coming. You're not sure how bad. You don't know how bad it's going to be, but you're trying to cover all your bases and to protect yourself and the ones you love and your businesses and everything else. Feel free to use that metaphor if you need to.
I understand that it is coming. We intend to make sure we appropriately notify folks when things are happening. And I think it's safe to say that it's a few months at least before the buildings get demoed in this area. Erica, do you have anything you want to add?
We're still working through some of the details on the schedule and the time, and at our next meeting, we should be able to provide kind of more detail on anticipated timing for activities to begin.
Because believe me, when those buildings are demoed, then the questions are going to be coming fast and furious. It's like, what the heck? Are they going to start digging now? And what about traffic? What about parking? Oh yeah, it's going to be off the hook when those buildings go down.
And we'll definitely be providing lots of detail in advance of that happening with you all here.
Anyone else? Any other CWG members? Anything like to say to the group? Questions to ask?
Did you send a reminder out for this? Because it's very odd to see a lot of people missing, especially like Danny Garza, for instance. I don't remember seeing a reminder.
It's interesting because Dan specifically sent an email asking when the next meeting was because he got confused about the date. So we resent him the link and he was specifically notified about today. So I'm not sure. Yeah, we sent out a reminder notice, the initial notice and reminder notice.
Yeah,
Okay.
emails went out last Friday to the group.
Okay.
And
I mean, I
invites
don't
went out
remember
before,
it, but I put things on my calendar, and the calendar reminds me to show up. So I don't necessarily pay attention to the emails all the time. I was with Danny yesterday down at City Hall, and I didn't mention anything, but maybe something came up.
Okay, thank you for sharing. Anyone else? All right, next slide, please, Joanne. So I'm going to move us towards adjourning. And before that, just a reminder, we will have the next CWG meeting in September, slated to be then. This is the draft agenda, another phase 2 update on early construction activities. Again, knowing those are coming. I want to give that analogy is good. I want to figure out how to work it out. So like we're tracking the forthcoming hurricane, reporting with live updates as we know them. So tune in and we'll keep you abreast with our best version of current information, update on community engagement, and then really station area planning as well. And that's all we got for today. So thank you, everybody. Thanks for participating again. We'll see you at the next CWG meeting and at the things that we do in between the CWG meetings. So have a great evening. Thanks for being here. Look forward to seeing you at the next CWG meeting and elsewhere in between. Thanks a lot.
Thanks, everybody.
Al, great to see you.
Thank you.